What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Summer is upon us.
It is.
With this weekend, summer starts, being the weekend of June 20th. We also know what June 20th is.
What is it?
The longest day of the year. It's the summer solstice.
Is there anything else on June 20th?
I'm pretty sure I was born on June 20th.
Were you?
Yes.
Nice.
So technically my birthday, I have a much longer birthday than most people.
What was that? About 7 years ago you
Somewhere
were born?
around there.
Yeah, something like that.
So, on the lines of whiskey and wings, the title of this podcast, summer brings upon us boozing time.
Boozing.
You got your barbecues, you got your weekend hangouts, the sun's out, you hang out on the patios of a...
What we've been known to do, sun's out, guns out.
Right.
You know?
I didn't see that coming. But, outdoor patios, things like that at bars, it's a good time of year.
Oh, it's a great time of year.
Yeah. So, on those lines, I know we've talked a lot about things that I've done, right? And
Apparently that's the name of this podcast. Yeah.
things that Brad has done.
Yeah.
Beer making. You
had a whole room in your garage.
I do. I have a brew room.
Yeah.
It's kind of been repurposed to a sauna room right now, but the brew room, I actually started making beer just out of high school.
You're making beer out of high school.
Yes. Kits. You could buy kits back then. Very simple. It's like in a can. It was like in a can.
Now, was this your way to get beer? Was
No.
it, or did you have other means? This was just something you were interested in.
Just something I was interested in. My dad actually allowed me to do this. I was underage. I think I was a senior in high school when I made my first beer kit.
Wasn't it good?
No, it was horrible.
Was it?
It was very rudimentary. It was like all your stuff that you needed
Yeah.
was in this a tin can, like a big tin can, probably about the size of this,
Yeah.
And it's like this molasses. It's a syrup. It's like a real thick molasses. It's all your malt and everything that you need.
Okay.
So basically all you did was you dumped that into a pot with 5 gallons of water and you boiled it for like an hour, threw it into one of those glass carboys,
Yeah.
pitched in some yeast, put a top on the top,
That was it.
an airlock on the top. And then, after about a week or so, it quit bubbling. And then you put it in bottles and you let it sit for a little bit because,
Did you even drink it all?
I would taste it. It was just very basic beer. I mean, I guess if that's all you had, it would be all right.
When you first told me that you brewed beer back then, I always thought it was a way to get beer because you were underage.
No, it was like a month-long process before you could even drink it. So if that was your only means of getting beer,
You had to really plan ahead. Like,
Right.
hey, we got a party coming up in July. Let's start making beer now.
right. And that's kind of what I do now, so when St. Patrick's Day comes around, I traditionally like to make some stouts and things.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start planning that,
Months out.
Yeah, January or February, Now I have the experience where I can speed up the process. I can cut some corners or use better techniques to speed everything up. But I kind of haven't been into it in the last year. Well, since pandemic, really.
Nah.
I really haven't brewed any beer lately. But
Did you make any this year or last year?
last year I may have made one batch.
Was it around? It was like it was before the pandemic because we started drinking it. It was like red something.
Right. That's what
Yeah.
it was, a red ale. It was for St. Patrick's Day 2020.
Oh, okay.
So, that was
Right at the pandemic.
right.
Yeah.
So I was starting probably right when the pandemic started. That was my last batch, but
Mm-hmm.
but then I got into all the extra equipment. You could really go down a rabbit hole. You could be very basic with it.
Yeah.
So you can do kit brewing, which companies make a kit with everything in it, and basically you follow their directions. They have all they have what's called full kits or partial grain kits. So full kits would be what I described, like your malt and everything is already been done for you, and it's like in a syrup. Okay?
So it's just different way, like
Levels.
you're starting at different places along the process. They did some
different
things for
levels.
you. Yeah.
So if you're doing a partial grain or a full grain's like full blown brewing, right? So you're
Okay.
taking there's the extreme one where you're taking the raw grains, maybe roasting them if that's what you're into. I buy pre-roasted stuff, so if you're doing a stout,
Yeah.
those grains are already roasted like coffee. That's what gives it its dark color.
Oh, okay.
Versus Bud Light would have zero roasting whatsoever, just dried. They were just germinated and dried. So
Just depends on the type of beer you want to make.
Right. So to really break it down basic,
Yeah.
to make beer, you basically take those grains. If you're doing a full grain and you steep them
Okay.
like you're making a cup of tea. So at different degrees of temperature with water for a certain amount of periods, it releases the sugar, the natural sugars and all the chemical stuff that makes beer.
Yeah.
You know? So what you do basically is you're steeping those grains in a certain manner, whether it be dripping water on them slowly, like, dunking a tea bag into some water, and then monitoring that level of heat in that water. So like at 140 degrees, so it's not boiling water.
Yeah.
And that at that temperature, it converts the carbohydrates to sugars and all that stuff. And then that liquid then gets transferred into a pot, boiled, adding your hops and stuff for bitterness and flavor.
You grow your own hops, right?
I do, but hops can grow anywhere.
Oh, okay.
They're more decoration to fill up the side of my garage, but I've thrown some of my own homegrown hops in with commercial grade hops.
Okay.
So you throw your hops in there for flavoring and bittering and stuff, and you boil that, and when it's done, it's considered a wort,
Okay.
W-O-R-T.
Wort.
And that's basically your unfermented beer. Cool it down
Okay.
to a fermenting temperature, which is anywhere from like 65 to 80 or so degrees. Different things.
What's it look like at this point?
It looks like a really dark coffee. It really depends on what you're doing. If it's a stout, it looks like stout. It looks like beer.
It looks like beer. At this point, it starts to look like beer.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then you throw in some yeast. You put an airlock on it so no bad bacteria can get in there. Obviously, sanitation is key. Fermentation starts. The yeast starts eating the sugars in the wort.
Okay.
When yeast eats sugar, basically the byproduct of that is carbon dioxide and alcohol.
Oh. So
you have an airlock on there. It lets the carbon dioxide release without anything coming in. So it's a one-way valve, basically. It ferments. It's now an alcoholic beer. Then you have to carbonate it, age it, and carbonate it. So when you age it, it's basically melting. It's not aging like wine where it needs to.
Yeah.
If you do a natural carbonation, which most home brewers start off with, you basically, when it's all done fermenting, you add a little bit more sugar. I mean, I'm talking, let's say a half a cup of sugar.
Okay.
To this 5 gallons, because everything's pretty much in 5-6 gallon batches.
How many bottles of beer does that make?
It makes about 2.5 cases of beer, 5 gallons. If you do a 12 ounce per bottle,
beer. It makes about
5 gallons divided into 12 ounce servings is about 2.5 cases.
Would that put about 80 beers? You're saying? Is a case 30 beers?
48, 60.
60. Okay.
Yeah, somewhere under. So you add a little bit more sugar, which kickstarts the fermentation process again, right?
Okay.
Because you're adding a little bit, because the yeast stop when there's no more sugar. They have nothing more to eat.
Yeah.
So there's still a little residual yeast in there. You add a little bit sugar and then instantly bottle them. Put them in bottles, cap them.
Okay.
That carbonate.
How do you bottle them? Like, is it
there's
like
siphoning tools that you use, like a siphoning bucket and like a little tube with a valve at the bottom, and you put the thing in there and hit the bottom of the bottle. It fills it up. You pull the tube out. It stops.
Okay.
Okay. So it's like an assembly line.
I always imagine like funnels, and you're just like dumping this beer in there.
No, you have to be very sterile. All your bottles are sterile. If you introduce anything foreign in it, then it could make the beer go bad. Because it's still a living creature, kind of, a little bit. There's just a little bit of
at that
yeast
point,
right?
yeah.
Add a little sugar to the whole thing, bottle it, put the cap on it, and you just let it rest in a cool area for a couple weeks. Basically what happens is it triggers the fermentation process a little bit, but now the CO2 can't get out of the bottle. Okay. So basically it dissolves into it, or it absorbs into the liquid. Bang, you have carbonated beer. So the downside to that is when you crack open that beer, you can't drink it out of the bottom, because since the yeast started feeding on sugar again, there's basically yeast poop. It's like
at the bottom
a material, so it settles to the bottom, just a little coating. Yeah. And if you drink it out of the bottle, it stirs it up, and it has a bitter taste, and it could upset your stomach. So basically, you gently pour that into a glass, let a little bit of the liquid in the bottle to not kind of undisturb that.
How does like major, like Bud Light get rid of that?
Filtering processes, and they force carbonate their beer. For instance, that's what I can do now. So forced carbonation is you skip the part when your wort's done.
Yeah.
And you have it cool down, and you add yeast, and it ferments. When that fermentation process is done, now I can take that. I can force carbon. If I'm kegging it, for instance, I can put it in kegs. You basically pressurize that keg to a certain psi of CO2, and you put it in a refrigerator because carbon dioxide absorbs easier at colder temperatures. And every now and then you go and shake it, and you're basically forcing that CO2 to absorb into the liquid.
You literally shake it.
Yep. So,
all right.
So you shake it, and you want it. You're shaking it anyway at different parts to aerate it, so there's oxygen. But I also have, so I can force carbonate in about a day and a half.
Oh, so you're cutting.
Right. So you've just eliminated a couple weeks of sitting in bottles. But now you have to get that pre-carbonated beer out of the keg and into bottles if you want to put it into bottles. You could run that keg and just put it to a tap system and you're done. I do that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that's how you do it at your house,
But then I have a carbonated beer filler, which is this apparatus that's like a stainless steel nozzle with a cork at the very top of it, and it hooks up to the keg, and you stick that into a bottle, and you turn a valve, and it actually pushes the beer out of the keg with a little bit more CO2, and it fills the bottle up, and it has like a pressure release, and then as soon as it's filled up, you pull it off and you cap it, and it's pre-carbonated, already in the bottle, ready to drink. No sediment, no anything.
No sediment. You can drink the whole thing.
Yeah, so I could actually have this beer on tap.
Yeah.
And then... oh, you're going to a picnic? I want to take a 6-pack with me. Yeah. Grab 6 clean bottles, really quick fill those bottles up, change the hookups onto it, put the filler onto it, fill up 6 bottles, put it in a cooler and roll.
How long would that take to do for a 6-pack?
To fill 6 bottles, it wouldn't be worth the mess and cleanup because then you have to clean everything and sanitize it for the next use, right? So I would buy a 6-pack before I did that, right? But, it's there.
Have you ever made a beer that would because you always talk about because you made whiskey, right? And you said it was just very middle of the road whiskey.
Correct.
Have you ever made a beer that was like, damn, this is good?
Yes, my stout. So early on, I started creating these. I probably had 6 go-to beers that I made. All right.
You were doing this quite a bit, huh?
Yeah. And I was naming them and giving them these stupid, catchy names, right? Just from life experiences, But my stout, which is called Birds at the Wire Stout, which is a hunting phrase we use when we're duck hunting.
Okay.
We hunt this place called The Wire. So we're always saying, hey, there's birds at the wire. So Birds at the Wire Stout was my go-to beer to make, and it always turned out excellent. I would put it right up there with Guinness.
Really?
Yeah, and then I would also put it on nitrogen so it would have a creamy head just like Guinness.
Just like Guinness.
Yeah, and I would have a stout tap system that would, basically...
You'd keep that at your bar at your house?
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't bottle well because you want to put it on nitrogen so it's that creaminess. I had Irish Redhead, which was that red one that I made.
I drank that, yeah.
I had a bunch of Pintail Ale was my go-to standard, like an ale, like
really?
a run-of-the-mill beer.
Okay.
I had quite a few of them. So my brewery was called Duck Dog Brewery. Once again, when I started really into beer making, I was also into duck hunting a lot. So just got my new lab.
Which is funny, you don't do that really at all. You're not that into it anymore, right?
What's that?
Duck hunting?
Oh yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh.
But, so I was really into my dog, so it was Duck Dog Brewery. In fact, the logo was my dog sitting in the reeds.
Gunner?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, so that was a short period of time.
Yeah.
That I was really into it.
That had to be expensive.
Dumped a lot of money into it.
I was going to say.
A lot. Once again, we're going back to when I get into stuff, I go 110%.
Yeah.
But, I would have a couple kegs already kegged. I would have bottled. I still have beer bottled from years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It's probably not very good because beers are perishable.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but it probably wouldn't taste that great.
It wouldn't be as good as when you first made it.
Right.
Yeah. So you went all into this.
Yeah. And then I tried to branch into something even better.
What's that?
Distilling. So well before these moonshiner shows and everything else,
Yeah.
I wanted to get into distilling. So knew nothing about
To
it.
make your own moonshine.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, making my own anything distilled. So in a sense, every type of alcohol, I'm talking distilled alcohol, is vodka. Is a clear distillate. So whiskey, rum, all of it.
At a certain point, it's all basically vodka.
The base of it is vodka with different ingredients added for flavoring. It either the start, the middle, or end process of the final product.
Okay.
So moonshine is basically very cheap corn vodka.
So did you got into this after or before beer?
In the middle of it.
Oh, okay. You just kind of, you
Yeah.
grew your brewery.
Right.
Yeah.
Into a distillery.
Into a
right?
distillery, yeah.
So distilling is 100% illegal.
Oh, okay. So
Let me
you've
correct you.
allegedly done this.
Allegedly, I've done this. If
Yeah.
I had a chance, I would have done this exactly like this.
Yeah.
So-
You've never done this, but if you were going to, this is
Correct.
how you would do it. Yeah.
First, I would make my own still
Yeah.
based off of information from the internet.
So this stuff's all readily available online, though.
Yes,
Pretty
the,
easily.
the information. Yes, you
Yeah.
can actually buy moonshining stills online from companies.
But if they're illegal, what is their...
Well, legally, you're allowed to make a distillate or ethanol, grain alcohol,
Okay.
for the purpose of fuel. We all see that, you go to the gas pump and it says could be up to 10% ethanol. That's moonshine. That's corn or sugar-based alcohol.
Okay. So
All right.
they sell these to make ethanol.
Correct. So you can make moonshine or a distillate according to the federal government, as long as you render it undrinkable immediately upon its creation. So you make a batch of, let's say, moonshine, corn liquor.
Okay.
As long as you render it
What does that mean?
undrinkable,
What does rendering...
You have to add something to it so it's not a drinkable product.
So it comes out as this corn vodka
Comes out as moonshine.
moonshine. Okay. And the legal way to do this is right away, what would you add?
You would add it to gasoline to stretch it.
Oh, you just dump it in with gasoline.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that prospect.
Yeah,
that,
okay.
that process
You're just
of
saying
that.
that's the technical.
Right. You can make alcohol out of a still without a license if it's for that purpose, for fuel. All right, so we're talking about...
Has anyone ever done that?
I don't know. Why would you?
Why? That's what I'm saying. Why
Somebody-
would you?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you always hear the white lightning cars and stuff that they would use like moonshine in these cars to make them go faster. And it would probably damage the engine because the engine isn't
made
used
for
to.
that. Yeah.
Also, you can distill essential oils, botanicals, and things like that. You basically render them down through the
Okay.
distillation process to make them more concentrated. I would never use a still for that. I don't even understand that process.
That part. Yeah.
So, but if I built my own still from the internet
Yeah.
using copper and things like
You'd
that.
have to be pretty good at welding.
Soldering for sure, yeah.
Soldering. Okay.
Yeah.
That's different than welding.
Well, soldering is using a soft metal to fuse like copper together. Traditionally lead.
Okay. What's
Or
welding?
not unlead. Welding is heating metal up and fusing it together and kind of with a...
Oh, so the soldering's using something else to fuse things together.
Correct.
Welding
Like-
is just...
Like a circuit board. You use solder in a hot iron to melt the solder to make the wire stick to the whatever.
where they're going.
Right.
Okay.
So solder all that together.
Mm-hmm.
No different than household plumbing and stuff like that. So then in its basics to make moonshine, it's basically corn, cracked corn. Use cracked corn, so
What's cracked corn mean? What do you mean by that?
it's a whole dried corn piece, right?
Okay.
Cracked at a mill. 6-piece, 7-piece crack is usually like it. That one kernel is cracked into 6 to 7 pieces.
Oh,
And basically that exposes the inside because the husk is very,
yeah.
hard to get through. So if you're trying to steep it like you do beer,
Yeah.
it's very hard if you use a whole kernel.
Okay.
So you crack it. Some people will use cornmeal, but then that just turns into a big messy paste.
Really?
So you take cracked corn,
Gotcha.
you take sugar, you put it in some boiling water, just like you're making corn beer basically.
Yeah.
add some yeast, the same process as making beer, add some yeast with that sugar is like an added kicker.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even need corn. Corn's used for a flavoring additive. Like that flavor will come through the liquid when you distill.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you can just take sugar and water, add yeast to it, and that yeast will turn that sugar water alcoholic.
Really?
Because the byproduct of yeast eating sugar is alcohol. So very cheap moonshine is called sugar liquor.
It's called sugar liquor.
Yeah,
which tastes even worse than moonshine.
I never made it, but that's
because I've just tasted moonshine.
It tastes like rubbing alcohol.
It's awful.
Right.
Yeah, even the smell of it. I mean, so the corn is like making it better.
Yeah, like those people that drink actual moonshine. Like,
I mean, they have problems.
Right.
Like, I think there's something else going on there.
Right. So basically, you make that corn beer, let it sit.
Yeah.
Now you can get with different yeasts. Like, so beer, you usually average beer around 5% or 5 ABV alcohol.
Yeah.
By volume.
Okay.
5 to, and then you get up your big stouts and IPAs, your double
10
IPAs.
to 11, yeah.
Yeah, 10 to 11. Like, there's yeast out there that you can get this corn beer up to like 13% alcohol.
Does that taste good at all?
What, like to drink it?
Yeah.
Like, you could drink this corn beer if you wanted to, but God help you.
Yeah.
But you want, like when I do it, I want a higher alcohol. So if
allegedly.
If I made a bad batch of beer, I could take that beer, put it in my still if I had one.
Yeah.
And make liquor out of it.
Would you ever do that, you think?
I never have, but there are people out there that do that.
Yeah.
Like because there's distillers and beer makers, that goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I the more alcohol you have in 5 gallons of corn beer,
mm-hmm.
the more output you're going to get on the back end when you're extracting that alcohol from the beer.
Okay.
So you take that, you put it in your still.
Gotcha.
Okay? Your still is comprised of a boiler, so a tank where that liquid is that you're going to heat up, a column, which is basically where the evaporates will go up.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a condensing unit, which is you're cooling the temperature down to convert those vapors, a gas, hits colder climate. Now it condenses back into a liquid, i.e. your distillate.
Okay.
So without getting into the science.
Like a big circle.
Right.
Yeah. Kinda.
Yeah. A loop.
A loop. Yeah, a loop.
So without getting into the science, because even I don't know all the science behind it.
Kevin probably does.
He does.
Because he's a chemist. Yeah.
Right. Basically, your alcohol boils off at a lower temperature than your water. Water, 212 at sea level, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol's around in the 140s to 170s. Okay.
So it's evaporating quicker than the water is.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So as you're heating up the boiler, the alcohol starts coming off first, right? So it works its way up.
It's a gas at this point.
It's a gas. Now, if it was just a wide open pipe and went up, it would be very difficult in an uncontrolled environment, because this boiler that I would have is very uncontrolled. I'm looking at temperatures and stuff, but I can't control it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some water vapors clinging to this ethanol.
Yeah.
Right. So basically in this column, you put what's called packing material. Any type of, people use marbles, I would use what's called cut Rossini rings, which is basically a ceramic straw about the size of a straw, cut into little pieces. And then you just stack them all inside your column where the vapors are working their way up. Mm-hmm. This allows any water vapors and things to cling onto it. It's basically surface area, a filter that it has to work its way up through.
Okay.
Vapors.
You're just trying to get as much surface area as possible for the water to attach to.
For water and everything else to cling to it, because there's other stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
So it comes off, it hits a cooler area, your coil, returns to a liquid, drops down into a collection vessel.
And it's just water collecting.
No, it's now alcohol. I'm talking.
The alcohol's made it up that far.
The ethanol.
The water attached to your marbles or Rossini rings or whatever.
Yes. So if I think you're only capable of doing 100% distillation in a lab setting. And I don't even think then. I think it's like 199 proof.
Okay.
Okay. So I can average, if I made this thing from the internet
Yeah.
and I was going to do all this,
Yeah.
I think I could probably average in the high 180s,
Which is pretty good.
which would be very good.
Yeah.
So
If in a lab setting they're getting 199
right,
or 198.
and I would have been making this in like my garage, this
Yeah.
like homemade apparatus,
and they're
without
saying you
knowing
can
it.
get, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So then from that, this is where, so basically that is vodka. So vodka would be the same thing, made from a different thing. So
This is
instead of
really highly alcoholic vodka at this
Yes.
point. Yeah.
yes. So vodka, what you would use are different other grains. So they use corn, but they use also wheat in vodka, potato vodka,
Yeah.
things like that. So vodka is basically a tasteless, colorless alcohol.
It's not tasteless. Tastes like shit.
Okay. But there's no other flavoring.
Yeah.
If you're making gin is nothing but is vodka with the introduction of juniper berries. So during the distillation process, when that liquid's going up, there is a section of that still in a commercial setting that's packed full of juniper berries. Right. And the distillate runs through it or is soaked in it afterwards, and it absorbs the flavor of and
that's what makes gin.
That's what gin is. Juniper.
You'd think that it would taste better, you know?
Whiskeys
Or all that put in a barrel, right?
is corn liquor.
Okay.
Has to be, like, if you're making American bourbon, it has to be 51% corn by standard. There's a couple standards involved in making bourbon. 51% corn, has to be aged in virgin white oak charred barrels, meaning it's never been used before. That barrel has to be never used before.
And what do they do when the barrel's done?
They sell them to other places, like wineries use them. Scotch, a lot of times in Scotland or other places, will use bourbon barrels pre-used, and they'll sell them there as an after product, and that's what they make their Scotch in, a used barrel. Because when you put a liquor into a barrel, right, they char the inside. So that's one, it's a filtering process, because it's actual charcoal. Charcoal filters out impurities, right?
Okay.
It adds color to it because of the char color, right?
That's how it gets that brown.
That's why it gets a darker color. And then there's tannins in the oak itself, like these chemicals that are in the oak, and it absorbs in a liquid. Same thing with wine. When they put wine in barrels, it absorbs like a dry red wine. It's dry from the tannins in the oak.
Okay.
So when you do,
they do all this stuff to make stuff that tastes like shit. Like,
right.
Think about that.
Yeah, look how down the rabbit hole they went, just to get
hammered. to get hammered, but to make it taste like a hair better.
Right.
Like, at a certain point, I would have been like, guys, I'm still just gonna mix this with Coke. Like, I mean, I guess back then they were mixing it with something else. Like, but it'd be like, I'm still mixing this with orange juice. There's so much into this.
There is.
And so that's how we get all the different types of liquors. They're standards, but they all start at one thing and then they just branch off.
Right. So so then you have your scotches. They do a little extra process with that. So it's kind of like making bourbon. So once you put bourbon in a barrel and then you sell it to somebody else, some of that essence of that barrel has been gone. It was extracted by the bourbon that was in it, right? So It's a milder barrel now. So when they put their scotch in it, it's not going to be as robust as a bourbon would be. It's milder. Same thing. Irish whiskey is put into used oak barrels as well. Irish whiskey tends to be milder than bourbon.
But so they make a barrel. I can't get over this, but they make a big wooden barrel. Mm-hmm. And they can only use that to make one barrel of whiskey. Most
major bourbon operations.
Yeah.
Your Buffalo Trace, you name it.
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels isn't a bourbon. It's a Tennessee whiskey.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, so that some reason it's a sour mash. The initial thing is like their mash, their corn liquor that they make,
Yeah.
is a sour mash, which is a 2-step process, which I think makes it fall out. It pretty much you wouldn't know it wasn't a bourbon if you tasted it because they're pretty similar.
They're very
but
similar.
technically it's just Tennessee sour mash.
If I put like 5 different whiskeys on here, would you be able to taste them and be like, and tell which one's which?
No, not by name.
No.
That's there's people out there that can do that.
But you're not there.
No.
Okay. I was just wondering.
So so Irish whiskeys are milder.
I'm just thinking if you did that to me, I'd be like, oh. I would taste a little bit and then, it still makes me feel like I'm going to throw up, you know?
Yeah. So Scotch, they add peat moss to it at some point.
Moss.
Yeah, like peat moss. You know what peat moss is? It kind of looks like moss. But it's like a fluffier moss. It grows in like damp places, like, especially in Scotland, right?
So who the fuck thought, like, who's like, let's take this?
It's what their environment was. A lot of this stuff, you know, these monks back in the day, whenever they were doing all this or whatever, or the knights or whatever, it's what they had to work with. Let's see if this can get you hammered, you know? Who was the first person that took a mushroom? You know?
Yeah.
Just trying it out.
Just trying it out.
Put stuff in your mouth and see what it does to you.
You imagine the first person that ate a mushroom?
All right.
They're like, what the fuck, man? That's whole, but like, there's so much that goes into it. It's just, to me, it's just wild. It's just different ways to get hammered. Yeah. That's really what it was.
Pretty much.
And we've really come a long way from back then.
Yeah. So, and then like rum is, there's more sugar. Like they use molasses and things like that.
And spices, right?
Yeah. Like if it's a spiced rum, but if it's like a clear rum. So instead of corn, they're making it out of a grain too. Could be wheat, could be rice, whatever. But there's a lot more like sugars involved. Like, they might actually even use the sugar plant. I'm not really sure about rum process, what they use to put in it, but yeah.
Man, this is getting me. I would like to distill something someday. I wish it was legal, you know?
Yeah, but like I was saying, you can buy stills online, like specific stills designed for alcohol manufacture, right?
Yeah,
small ones,
just small ones, yeah.
And they actually will give you a sticker with a serial number so you can register it with the, I guess it's ATF Bureau. Yeah, I think that's who does, alcohol, tobacco,
and then you could
firearms.
make your own, you could just have your own distillery?
No.
Oh, okay.
You could register it for the use of ethanol
or
botanicals. Who would do that? That's my question. Who would actually who would put themselves on
at the
radar?
beginning of the pandemic, you could have been making hand sanitizer, right?
Right.
You could have.
That was a lot of the distilleries did that.
Did they? Like their excess or whatever?
No, I think just as a public service, they,
Yeah. It's just wild. That many different ways to just get hammered. Little subtle differences, but would make a very big difference down the road. You know?
It's really like cooking too. A little dash of this, a little dash of that. It changes it completely. But the processes, like if I was to make my own bourbon myself, and I used premium ingredients for my mash, let's say different corns and malted barleys and all that things kind of like that, to make a premium batch, and I put it in a smaller version of a charred oak barrel and aged it for a year and 3 months, and let's say after that year and 3 months I tasted it, it would taste like a bad bourbon that you bought at a liquor store.
It would taste like bottom shelf.
Yes.
Wonder why?
Because they're professionals and I'm not.
So if you did all that, you think even after aging at a year and a half, it would just be very...
Right. So in a smaller barrel, like they'll age bourbon for like 8, 10, 12 years, right?
Wait, so...
I think it has to be aged for at least 2 years to be considered bourbon.
So the bourbon you get at a store, like a Buffalo Trace or something, was sitting in a barrel for the last 2 years.
I think Buffalo Trace is either 5 or 8 years. Well, what's that?
They have an assembly line for 5 to 8 years to like...
They have these huge barns. They have huge barns that these barrels just sit in, and then they rotate them in these barns because of the different heat and humidity levels where they're at.
Will change everything. Yeah,
it was a couple of years ago. It was either Jack Daniels or Jim Beam. They had a barn. I mean, they'll have like 6 or 7 barns on their property massive barn. Warehouses.
Is it mostly in Kentucky?
Yes.
Are these mostly in Kentucky?
Yes. Yeah. Tennessee, Kentucky. One of them, like it was either a fire that happened or the back end of a barn collapsed and all this barrels fell out and into this local water source. And like, it was like a big fish kill because it's straight up
alcohol,
whiskey in
yeah,
the thing. But I forget, it was either Jim Beam or Jack Daniels or something like that happened to.
Really?
Yeah. But you can go on these tours at these distilleries, which I haven't been on,
yeah,
and go through these things, and they're like just rack systems.
I'm surprised you've never done that.
I want to, but you know. So like, what's that bullet right there? So this
For
is
our audio listeners, he's inspecting a bottle of Bullet whiskey right now.
Yeah, so Bullet is 90 proof. It doesn't say how long it's been aged, so it's probably just been the standard 2 years or whatever the thing is. But like if you get...
But so that's why Buffalo Trace isn't... They can't just make more of it right now. It's
Right.
only what they had 2 years ago.
So correct. So the big Buffalo Trace, which is a very bottom shelf bourbon. It's a good bourbon.
Yeah.
It's right along the lines of Jim Beam and everything, and it's won its share of awards, but it's so hard to find right now for two reasons. Underproduction, they misinterpreted the market for bourbon, so they didn't produce a certain amount the year it needed to be in the
2 years
subsequent
ago,
years
yeah.
or whenever years. And its notoriety it got off of things like Joe Rogan's podcast. You know, as a marketing tool, they sent him some Buffalo Trace. He started talking about it on all his podcasts. He was offering it to all his guests. Next thing you know, everybody's going out buying Buffalo Trace whiskey. You can't find it anywhere.
You can't get it anywhere.
Right.
You still can't, right?
And it's a $25 bottle of bourbon. It's not like it's this upper shelf, you know, Basil Hayden's or you know, whatever.
It's $25.
It's not Pappy Van Winkle, which is made by Buffalo Trace.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the same distillery.
What do they do different though? Just more premium ingredients?
Prestige. It's just, you know.
I bet I could taste Pappy Van Winkle and Buffalo Trace and not know the difference.
Probably not.
No.
That's why I'd never want to get one of those $400 bottles of Pappy Van Winkle or
Didn't
whatever.
you put in for the...
I did for the lottery.
Did
but
you get it?
If I ended up getting one or the opportunity to buy one,
Yeah.
that $400 bottle of bourbon would drink just as quickly as the $24 bottle of bourbon.
Be
I would
cool
guess.
though.
Right. Unless I kept it under lock and key and gave my wife the key.
Yeah.
So, but
It would just go... You would drink it on a weekend. Yeah. Pretty much.
One of these summer sit out in the deck parties and it'd be gone. You know, next morning go out to get your your $400 bottle of bourbon.
Like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So in your time, you have never distilled, but always wanted to. You understand the process.
Right.
And you have made beer though.
Yes.
And the beer is good.
Beer's legal to make. You're allowed to make a certain volume a year by yourself.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you can put in for like micro distilling license and things like that, but that's more business related, and you know, states get involved,
yeah.
the federal government gets involved, taxes and all that stuff. But like I
Who
said,
pays those? You know.
right? So, but.
Cool.
All right. Well,
That was kind of our summer kickoff.
kick off the summer synopsis on all
Brad's
things alcohol.
Brad's life lessons: how to make alcohol,
or
how to get hammered.
if I was to make alcohol,
yes,
that's how I would do it.
You're just letting all of our viewers, listeners know how to do it.
In case they were interested in these things.
You never know.
That's what
Maybe
we're
they
here for.
will be now.
Right.
If you are, get a hold of us at
The Whiskey and Wings Podcast at gmail.com. Be sure to like us on YouTube, subscribe.
Podcast services.
All the podcast services out there. We're on all of them, all the audio ones. Check our Instagram
page.
out, The Whiskey and Wings Podcast. And until next time.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Peace out.
Later.
Bye.